Have you ever walked into a room and felt an invisible wall rise between you and someone else? Have you noticed a cold stare from a stranger, even though you've never exchanged a word? And have you ever asked yourself, why does this person seem to dislike me when I've done nothing wrong? It's unsettling, isn't it? You're kind, respectful, maybe even warm. Yet, for reasons you can't explain, someone responds with distance or disdain. It's a strange, silent tension that can leave you questioning everything about the interaction. Why do people sometimes harbor resentment or dislike without clear cause? What fuels this quiet hostility? Often, it's not your actions, your words, or even your presence. The reasons are buried deeper, hidden beneath layers of personal insecurity, long-standing emotional wounds, or silent comparisons that others never speak aloud. Maybe it's unspoken envy. Maybe it's a subtle sense of inferiority. Sometimes, it's a simple misunderstanding that has quietly taken root and grown into something darker. Understanding why others may feel negative toward us isn't just about solving a mystery. It's about learning how to better navigate the often unpredictable nature of human relationships. These insights are powerful tools. They can open your eyes to what's really happening beneath the surface and help you respond not with confusion, but with clarity and calm. In this video, we'll explore 9 surprising reasons why people might feel strong, negative emotions toward you, even if you've done nothing to deserve it. Some of these may shock you. Others might feel uncomfortably familiar. But all of them will help you understand the hidden dynamics at play in your everyday interactions. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to thank you sincerely. Your support, your thoughtful comments, they're what make this work deeply meaningful. Every message you send is read and appreciated. And if you're joining us for the first time, I'd be honored if you supported the video by tapping the like button and turning on notifications. This helps the message reach others who might truly need it. Now let's begin this eye-opening journey into the truth behind social friction and how to recognize it when it appears. Envy and jealousy, one of the most common and emotionally charged reasons someone may develop hostility toward you is envy, or its darker twin, jealousy. These two emotions are like acid in a relationship. What begins as admiration can quickly curdle into contempt. What once felt like respect turns into resentment. Envy often surfaces when someone sees something in you that they secretly desire, but believe they can't achieve. Maybe it's your confidence, your success, your kindness, your lifestyle, your peace. Whatever it is, your presence becomes a mirror, one that reflects back their perceived inadequacies. Instead of feeling inspired, they feel judged, not by you, but by the comparison they've created in their own mind. And over time, those feelings ferment into something much more powerful. Resentment, the real tragedy? It has little to do with you, and everything to do with how they feel about themselves. When envy festers, it doesn't just stay silent. It starts to act. As we've seen, jealousy can twist admiration into bitterness. But what happens next is even more destructive. For some, the only way to ease the sting of their own dissatisfaction is to hope for your failure. It's not always obvious. It doesn't come with open conflict, but it shows up in whispers behind your back, in subtle efforts to diminish your accomplishments. They might spread false stories, question your integrity, or cast doubt on your abilities, all with the quiet hope that tearing you down will somehow lift them up. In their mind, you've been placed on a pedestal, and bringing you down becomes their way of leveling the ground. This, of course, has nothing to do with you. Envy and jealousy are emotional battles fought entirely within the person who feels them. Yet, when you're the target of that frustration, it can be easy to question yourself, to wonder, did I do something wrong? But here's the truth. You are not responsible for someone else's insecurities. Your success, your growth, your light, none of that should be dimmed just because someone else is struggling with shadows of their own. As the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius wisely said, "Do not worry about what you cannot control." And that includes other people's envy. You cannot dictate how others feel about your achievements, but you can choose how you respond. Instead of absorbing their negativity, Stoicism teaches us to focus inward, to ground ourselves in what we can control, our actions, our attitude, our peace. Understanding the root of this resentment allows you to face it with maturity. When you recognize that someone's hostility may have little to do with you, it becomes easier to stay centered and move forward with clarity. It's a powerful step toward protecting your emotional well-being and continuing your personal and professional journey. Now, let's move from envy to another quiet but powerful force that can shape the way others feel about you. Misunderstandings and poor communication. 2. Misunderstandings and poor communication. It's remarkable how something as small as a misunderstood comment or an unintended tone can snowball into full-blown resentment. At the heart of many conflicts lies not malice, but miscommunication, a word spoken too quickly, a message received out of context, a facial expression misread. These tiny moments can create gaps, and in those gaps, people fill in their own assumptions. Before long, they begin to see you through a distorted lens, maybe as cold, distant, disrespectful, even if none of that was your intention. That's the quiet danger of ineffective communication. It builds invisible walls, emotional distance grows, and resentment begins to take root, not because of who you are, but because of how you were misinterpreted. Clear and honest communication is the foundation of every meaningful relationship. When it's missing, assumptions and doubts rush in to take its place. And those assumptions, they're often wrong. That's why it's so vital to slow down and ensure your words and your tone truly reflect what you mean. And when in doubt, to clarify, to ask, to listen, because sometimes the root of another person's coldness is just a simple misunderstanding waiting to be unraveled. Next, we'll dive deeper into how emotional projection, another hidden force, can quietly influence how others see you, and you might be surprised by how often it happens. When communication breaks down, misunderstanding doesn't just happen, it multiplies. As we just explored, a misread expression or a poorly timed comment can quietly reshape how someone sees you. But the danger deepens when these small misinterpretations go unaddressed. Think about it. When someone doesn't feel truly heard or understood, how quickly do assumptions take over? One of the biggest culprits behind this is the absence of active listening, the kind where you're not just hearing words, but truly absorbing the meaning behind them. When we fail to listen with care, we miss the deeper emotions, the unspoken concerns, and the full context of someone's words. And when that happens, misunderstanding becomes almost inevitable. These aren't just surface-level disagreements. They begin to plant seeds of doubt, resentment, and emotional distance. Over time, people begin crafting an image of you based not on reality, but on these skewed perceptions. A single moment of misjudgment can quietly evolve into lasting hostility. What began as a minor gap in understanding transforms into suspicion and even distrust. That's why it's so crucial to be intentional with our communication. Clarity and openness aren't luxuries, they're necessities. When you sense uncertainty, don't guess, ask. When a situation feels tense, give the benefit of the doubt. And when something doesn't feel right, step into their shoes, even briefly, and try to understand the world from their view. Transparent, honest communication is one of the most powerful tools we have for diffusing tension before it grows. It creates space for empathy, for patience, and for connection, and it reminds us that not every cold stare or harsh response comes from hostility. Sometimes it's just the result of a misunderstanding that was never cleared up. Now, let's shift to another major reason people may harbor resentment toward you, and this one runs even deeper. Fundamental differences in values and beliefs. Differences in fundamental values and beliefs. We live in a beautifully diverse world. Each person is shaped by a unique combination of upbringing, experience, culture, and personal reflection, like puzzle pieces that form their identity. But when two people hold values that clash, tension can arise quickly and unexpectedly. And here's the thing, these clashes don't always come from major topics like politics or religion. They often surface in subtle, everyday ways, like differences in how we define success, how we approach work, how we choose to live, or even how we spend our free time. When someone views their values as the only right way to live, anyone who sees the world differently can feel threatening to them. Your very existence, your choices, your perspective can be seen as a challenge to their identity. This defensive mindset builds walls. Small disagreements suddenly feel personal. And instead of seeing differences as opportunities to learn or grow, they become reasons for division and disdain. The deeper a belief is rooted, the more easily it can feel attacked, even when no offense was intended. That's why conversations that begin with curiosity often end in conflict if empathy isn't present. It's not always about who's right or wrong. Often it's about whether we're willing to understand someone else's lens, or too eager to defend our own. The more we rush to judgment, the more we lose the chance to connect. Without that effort to understand, we start stacking bricks of assumption. Over time, those bricks become walls. And those walls, they shut out compassion, connection, and ultimately each other. In the next section, we'll explore yet another quiet source of conflict: emotional projection. When people reflect their own unresolved struggles onto you, often without even realizing it. When we fail to respect differing values, it doesn't just create distance. It opens the door to quiet, growing resentment. And often, this resentment isn't born from logic, but from unspoken fears, personal insecurities, and deeply ingrained biases. Stoic philosophy reminds us that our beliefs and values are not universal truths. They are shaped by our environment, our upbringing, and our life experiences. As the Stoic thinker Epictetus wisely observed, we are all products of the world we were raised in. So when someone else sees the world differently, it's not a threat. It's a reflection of their unique journey. This realization invites us to shift from judgment to curiosity. Instead of asking, "Why don't they think like me?" we begin asking, "What might they have experienced that shaped that belief?" Open dialogue, paired with tolerance and mutual respect, doesn't just help prevent resentment, it enriches us. It allows us to engage with the world in a fuller, more empathetic way. Because the truth is, not everyone will see life through your lens. And that's not only okay, it's essential in a diverse, pluralistic society. Now let's turn to another force that quietly fuels hatred, one that spreads even faster than misunderstandings or conflicting values: the influence of gossip and rumors. 4. The influence of gossip and rumors, it's one of the oldest poisons in human interaction, and also one of the most powerful. Whispers in the dark. Stories passed from ear to ear, exaggerated tales, often detached from the truth, but dressed up just enough to seem believable. Gossip has the power to destroy reputations before you've spoken a single word in your defense. It moves like a virus, silent, quick, and hard to contain. Once it spreads, it doesn't stay the same. It mutates, evolves, becoming more dramatic, more distorted, and more damaging. And worst of all, the version of you it creates is not one you recognize. Rumors often aim for the most vulnerable parts of your character or past, whether real or entirely fabricated. They strip away context, flatten complexity, and build a narrative around you that fits someone else's agenda. Even without any proof, gossip gains momentum. Why? Because people tend to believe what fits their assumptions. When a rumor aligns with someone's bias or suspicion, it feels like confirmation. And that makes it dangerously persuasive. Add to that the seductive nature of gossip, its forbidden tone, its emotional sting, and you get something people can't resist. Repeating. Like wildfire, it spreads, gaining power with every retelling until it no longer resembles the original spark that started it. The consequences, they can be devastating. Friendships fracture, trust erodes, opportunities vanish. People may pull away, not because of who you are, but because of who they've been told you are. And in some cases, that kind of reputation damage isn't just social. It becomes personal, professional, and painfully permanent. When hate is born from whispers, it's one of the hardest battles to fight, because you're not fighting truth. You're fighting shadows. Up next, we'll explore how unresolved pain from someone's past, pain they never dealt with, can be projected onto you, without you even knowing it. When rumors twist your image, the most painful part isn't the lie itself. It's the version of you that people start to believe. A version that doesn't exist. That's why gossip is such a difficult kind of hostility to confront. You're not facing facts. You're fighting against distortion. But in moments like this, the Stoics remind us what you control is your character, not other people's opinions. And that is where your power lies. Yes, gossip. is destructive. It can feel overwhelming, even unfair. But your commitment to the truth, to living with integrity, honesty, and calm resolve, is your strongest shield. You don't need to defend yourself with noise. Your actions over time will speak louder than any falsehood. When you stay grounded in authenticity, when your values remain unwavering in the face of slander, you create a quiet contrast to the chaos. That contrast is powerful. It may not erase the rumors overnight, but it slowly restores your image in the eyes of those who truly matter, because the truth, lived consistently and without compromise, is far stronger than any lie whispered behind your back. Now let's move into one of the most subtle, yet deeply influential reasons why people may develop resentment toward you: personal insecurities and projection. 5. Personal insecurities and projection. This dynamic often goes unnoticed, yet it operates in the background of countless social tensions. Here's the core idea: when people don't address their own inner struggles, those unresolved insecurities begin to spill outward, and often they land on the people who least deserve it. Imagine someone who carries a deep fear of failure. Instead of acknowledging that fear, they look at you, someone confident or successful, and begin to feel uneasy. That discomfort doesn't stay hidden. It transforms into envy, into resentment, eventually even into hostility. These emotions don't come from anything you've done. They come from wounds they haven't healed. As the Stoic philosopher Seneca wisely observed, people who feel deeply insecure often project their emotions onto others, especially onto those who seem to embody the very things they lack. This projection acts as a kind of emotional escape hatch, a way to shift the discomfort outward instead of facing it head-on. For example, someone who feels unaccomplished might quietly harbor resentment toward a colleague who's thriving in their career, or someone who struggles with self-image may feel animosity toward another person's confidence. These feelings aren't about you, they're about what you represent, a mirror reflecting back something they'd rather not confront. Over time, this can evolve into something far more damaging. You become a symbol, not of inspiration, but of comparison. Instead of lifting themselves up, they begin to pull you down, hoping it will silence the voice of self-doubt in their own mind. And it's not just about envy. It's about threat, your growth, your strength, your peace. These can all feel threatening to someone who hasn't found those things within themselves. What you see as a personal milestone, they see as a reminder of everything they haven't yet achieved. But here's the truth. You are not responsible for anyone else's healing. You can offer compassion. You can remain kind, but you are not required to shrink just to make others comfortable. In the next section, we'll explore how unresolved emotional pain, often rooted in someone's past, can quietly shape their hostility toward you, and what you can do about it. When someone feels inadequate, their reaction might come out as coldness, criticism, or even open hostility, not because of who you are, but because of what you represent to them. That's why it's so important to remember their negative emotions are a reflection of their internal struggles, not your actions. Understanding this truth can be incredibly liberating. Instead of internalizing their hostility or questioning your worth, you can view the situation with clarity and distance. You don't have to carry the emotional weight of someone else's unresolved pain, but there's more. Recognizing this, Dynamic is not only a tool for self-protection, it's also the beginning of a more compassionate response. When we see that hostility often stems from hidden insecurity, we're better equipped to respond with empathy instead of defensiveness. It allows us to pause to consider the deeper reasons behind someone's behavior and to choose a response that doesn't escalate conflict. This understanding can help build a more positive environment, one rooted in patience, not assumptions. That brings us to another crucial factor in why people might develop resentment or hostility toward you: a lack of empathy and understanding. Lack of empathy and understanding. In a perfect world, every interaction would be guided by compassion, the kind where people take time to see life through each other's eyes. But as you've likely experienced, reality often falls short of that ideal. One of the deeper, and often hidden, sources of resentment is the simple absence of empathy. When someone cannot step outside of their own perspective to understand yours, a wall begins to form. It's invisible at first, but it thickens with every misunderstanding, eventually turning into distance, judgment, and even animosity. This lack of empathy isn't just about emotional coldness. It's also a cognitive disconnect, a failure to grasp someone else's intentions, emotions, or challenges. Without that understanding, people start misreading everything. A neutral comment might be taken as criticism. A boundary might be seen as rejection. The space between intention and perception gets filled with assumptions, and those assumptions often lean toward the negative. Over time, this misunderstanding morphs into resentment, and ironically, it exists without any real offense ever taking place. People who lack empathy tend to fall into mental shortcuts, seeing the world in stark black and white. There's little room for nuance. They judge others quickly and often harshly based on surface-level impressions. Context is ignored, motivations are misunderstood, and as a result, resentment is born not from reality, but from ignorance. This rigid way of thinking often goes hand in hand with a more self-centered mindset. Narcissistic individuals in particular are so preoccupied with themselves that they lose the ability or the will to truly see others. They might dismiss someone's struggles with a shrug or ignore their success with jealousy or indifference. It's not that they can't understand others, it's that they don't prioritize it. And when empathy is absent, it's easy for disdain to take root. Up next, we'll explore another subtle but destructive force, past emotional wounds, and how people often unknowingly carry those unresolved experiences into present relationships, projecting pain onto those around them. When empathy is absent, misunderstanding can easily be mistaken for hostility. A quiet person might seem cold. A simple boundary might feel like rejection. Over time, others may start to feel dismissed, belittled, even hated, when in truth, they're reacting to their own emotional blind spots. That's why it's so important to remember. Much of the resentment you encounter isn't a reflection of your actions. It's a reflection of their emotional limitations. Recognizing this allows you to navigate these difficult interactions with greater calm. It helps you respond not with defensiveness, but with compassion. You can choose to build bridges when possible and protect your peace when it's not. Instead of absorbing their negativity, you stay grounded in your truth, resilient in your response, and clear about what's yours to carry and what's not. Now, let's turn to another powerful source of resentment: competition and rivalry. 7. Competition and rivalry. In many relationships, whether personal, professional, or even within families, there's a silent tension that lingers beneath the surface. It's the sense of being measured, compared, ranked, and when competition crosses the line from motivation to obsession, it becomes a dangerous fuel for resentment. Healthy rivalry can be productive. It can push people to grow, to strive, to become better. But when that competition becomes twisted by jealousy, insecurity, or past wounds, something changes. It's no longer about reaching your own potential. It's about watching someone else fall. This toxic mindset takes root when someone feels overshadowed, when they believe their efforts go unnoticed while someone else receives praise. Instead of channeling those feelings into growth, they direct their energy into bitterness. Their goal isn't to rise, it's to see the other person stumble, and this bitterness intensifies when they view the other person's success as undeserved. Now, that should have been mine. They didn't earn it. They don't deserve the recognition. That's when admiration turns to contempt. And in some cases, that contempt becomes action. As Marcus Aurelius warned, unchecked rivalry can push people to betray their values. It leads to destructive behavior. Things like backhanded comments, sabotage, or subtle acts meant to tear someone down. Not only does this hurt the person being targeted, but it slowly corrodes the character of the one doing it. Because when the need to win overrides integrity, everyone loses. Recognizing the signs of unhealthy competition in others or even in yourself is the first step toward preventing this cycle. You don't have to engage in the silent war. You don't have to compete with someone else's path. In the next section, we'll explore another often overlooked trigger for resentment: lack of boundaries, and how your ability to say no might unintentionally invite criticism or even hostility. Understanding the hidden roots of rivalry and how easily it can turn toxic is essential. Once we recognize it, we have the power to shift from competition to collaboration, or at the very least, we learn to compete with integrity and respect. Remember, someone else's success doesn't take anything away from you. There's enough space for all of us to thrive in our own time, in our own way. When you adopt this mindset, it becomes a powerful shield against the bitterness born from blind comparison. It allows you to celebrate others without diminishing yourself. And that's not just maturity, it's freedom. Now, let's look at another subtle but powerful source of resentment: the pressure of social expectations. Gil White. The pressure of social expectations. In many communities, there's an unspoken rule book, a set of norms, values, and behaviors that people are expected to follow. These standards often go unquestioned, passed down from generation to generation, like tradition carved in stone. But what happens when you choose a different path? Maybe you pursue a creative career instead of a conventional one. Maybe your lifestyle, beliefs, or relationships don't align with what your culture, family, or peers expect. You're not doing anything wrong. You're just choosing what feels right for you. Yet to others, this can be deeply unsettling. Why? Because your choices quietly challenge the structure they've built their identities around. Your freedom forces them to confront their own limitations, and that can trigger discomfort, even resentment, not because of who you are, but because you're holding up a mirror to what they've been taught to suppress or deny. Often, this resentment doesn't come from a place of malice. It comes from fear of the unknown, fear of change, fear of anything that doesn't fit neatly into their worldview. But here's the truth. This is your life. You weren't born to meet expectations. You were born to create meaning. And meaning doesn't always follow the rules. Every time you make a choice that aligns with your values, even when others disapprove, you take one step closer to true freedom. Authenticity isn't just a personal trait. It's a declaration. I will live a life that's mine, not one designed by others. Of course, it takes courage, but the reward? A life that's deeply, honestly, joyfully your own. Don't let outdated expectations write your story. Let your values guide you, even when the world tells you to turn back. And now we move into one of the most emotionally charged causes of resentment, the feeling of being unrecognized. Because few things cut deeper than being overlooked when you've given your best. 9, lack of recognition, when recognition is absent. Especially in environments where competition is high, resentment can quietly take root. Whether it's in the workplace, among friends, or within your own family, the desire to be seen and appreciated runs deep. And when that need goes unmet, it doesn't just vanish, it transforms. Bitterness builds gradually. One unacknowledged effort, one overlooked contribution, and over time, that silent disappointment becomes something much heavier, resentment, and in some cases, outright hostility. As the philosopher Epicurus once observed, when a person feels that their efforts go unnoticed while others receive praise, it can spark quiet jealousy, even if no harm was intended. It's a natural human response, but left unchecked, it can damage even the strongest of bonds. That's why it's so important to understand this truth. Recognition is deeply personal. Some people crave verbal appreciation. Others need to feel valued through trust or respect. And because these needs vary, open communication is essential. A simple, timely acknowledgement can make all the difference and prevent the slow buildup of negative feelings that might otherwise fester in silence. But what if the negativity persists? What if you're doing your best and still absorbing emotional tension that isn't yours to carry? This is where boundaries come in. Setting healthy boundaries isn't cold. It's not selfish. It's an act of strength, a way of protecting your peace in a world that often tries to disrupt it. You are not required to carry the weight of someone else's inner conflict. Whether their resentment stems from jealousy, unspoken values, gossip, or insecurity, it reflects their struggle, not your identity. Let that sink in. You are not responsible for someone else's emotional storm. By understanding these hidden drivers of hostility, you give yourself the freedom to stop internalizing what was never about you in the first place. You create distance, not from others, but from their expectations. And with that distance comes clarity. So, what should you focus on instead? Focus on your character, on your growth, on the relationships that nourish your soul, the people who respect you, not because you conform, but because you're you. Choose honesty over approval. Choose peace over validation. And in doing so, you choose a life that's truly yours. 2. Close. Here's one final thought. Everyone you meet is fighting a battle you cannot see. So when someone dislikes you, when their energy feels off, pause before blaming yourself. More often than not, you're simply standing in the light, and they haven't made peace with their own shadows. Walk your path with kindness, with authenticity, with courage, because the world doesn't need more perfection. It needs more people who dare to be real. Surround yourself with those who celebrate your light, not shrink from it. In doing so, you create a life of strength, connection, and quiet joy. Thank you for being here. And remember, the most powerful change begins within. Let that truth guide you every step of the way.